Welcome to FOBtv, the future of business. I'm your host, Kevin Benedict, the futurist here at TCS, and I'm very excited that you joined us and my guest today, Celia Fleischaker. Celia, thanks for joining us.
Thanks, Kevin, for having me. I appreciate it.
Absolutely. Celia is the Chief Marketing Officer at Verint, and you guys have been doing all kinds of reorganization and positioning yourself during the pandemic. Talk to us about that.
It's been a big year, yeah. Earlier in the year, we spun off one of our divisions so that we became a pure play customer engagement company. We relaunched a lot around our brand and our positioning. I mean, we're not new to the space. We've kind of been a leader or have been a leader here for years. And it really reinvigorated the organization and how we go to market. And we're just excited because it couldn't come at a better time because customer engagement is so important today, especially with everything that's happened with the pandemic.
Oh, absolutely. We see it every day in these kinds of interactions and in our strategy. And the fact that I haven't been on an airplane in almost 2 years. I'm going to break that in a couple of weeks. So we're going to go see our daughter in California. So that's
nice.
My first trip back to an airport says, boy, early 2020. Just crazy.
It is crowded. It's surprising when you go. I was shocked to see how full the airport was. So.
Oh my, but it's probably not the same crowd that used to be there.
Exactly.
It's everybody that's in their children and their aunts and grandmas all trying to see each other again. I bet. So Celia, let me just ask this. You spent most of your career in marketing, if not all your career in marketing. I spent a lot of times on the edges of marketing, both in and out, kind of, especially in the influencer place as well. In my experience, if I think back to 30 years ago when I first jumped into high tech, the person in marketing was a couple things. They were the multitasker and they were the creative. Nowadays, it seems like marketing leaders have to almost be data scientists. What have you experienced in your career and how have you seen that evolve?
Yeah, you're totally right. I mean, it's changed so much. And I've been in, like you said, my whole career, a long career in marketing, and I loved it, but it does change and has changed a lot. And thankfully for me, it did move toward that science side. I mean, marketing ops wasn't even a thing when I started in marketing. But today, understanding the data, understanding the metrics, being able to measure what you do is all just, it's part and expected, with marketing. And so that art and creative side is still very, very important, but it has to be paired with that science piece.
Oh my. So we hear a great deal about customer experience today, but before we kind of peel back the layers and dig deep, let's just start by asking, what do people really want from a customer experience and how do you find that out?
I think they want what anyone wants from a relationship, right? You want to be understood. So if I'm a consumer talking to a brand, I want them to know me. I want them to meet me where I want to be met on whatever channel it is. I think it really is about understanding, and empathy is so important today to the experience. And if we look at how different it is or how much harder it is today for a brand to offer up the right experience, it's changed so much. If we think about it over the last 18 months, we've had this huge shift to digital channels, and you see the number of channels increasing. You see the number of interactions really just kind of skyrocketing. Expectations that customers have of these brands is kind of through the roof. So you've got this steep curve from a consumer perspective. And then from a brand perspective, I mean, you haven't seen people necessarily throw a lot of resources at customer engagement. They've had to kind of keep that line has stayed relatively flat. And it's created this kind of pull, this natural pull, this gap. The trick, the problem that brands have is, how do I close that gap? And if you can close that gap, you're going to deliver that great experience. But that's a tough thing to do.
So what are some of the factors that actually influence whether a customer feels it's a good or bad experience?
There, because of the complexity of the journey, the number of channels, there are a lot of failure points or potential failure points that a customer can experience. And I think if you start and talk about where a lot of consumers today start their journey, they started on those digital channels. And it's amazing to me, the trust level that brands put into, say, a chatbot or an IVA, an intelligent virtual assistant, to deliver the customer experience. And that decision sometimes gets made in a single department. It gets implemented maybe in a bit of a silo. But if you think about how much of your brand experience you're trusting to that bot, it should be amazing. Huge investments should go into that. And you want to make sure that it's connected with the rest of that journey. So I think making sure you have the right conversational AI, making sure you're able to deliver that right experience is really important. And then making sure you're able to shift from that channel to a different channel, depending on the consumer's needs, is important as well. And I think from an agent perspective, a lot of people talking about employee experience and the agent experience, and everyone has a story about their interaction with an agent, right? That agent's job has gotten a lot harder over the last 18 months. And what simple things are taken care of in the digital channels. And what eventually gets to an agent is a lot more complex. And so being able to have technology that kind of surrounds that agent and serves up the right information they need at the right time, simplifies their job so they can focus on that interaction, is really important.
So it just occurred to me while you were sharing that insight, Celia, that I speak completely different when I'm speaking to a chatbot.
Oh, yeah.
It's like, okay, this is a chatbot. I can't just like joke and do all these other things. They're just not going to know what I'm doing. And it's not going to help me. So when you find yourself talking to a chatbot, do you like, does your brain completely turn into a different mode? Like, okay, how do I need to ask the question given that it's
I'm not nearly as fun in my chatbot mode. Yeah. And so I think people do, but they don't necessarily have to be. And that's where that difference comes in, right? Like, how good is your conversational AI? Can you get colloquialisms? Can you understand what these people are saying? Because people speak differently. Everyone has their own way of conversing. And so, that's interesting because people do change how they interact depending on what's on the other side.
I take my mom to the doctor's office and she wants to tell stories the whole time. And I'm like, Mom, before we get out of the car, let me explain. We're there to articulate your symptoms. No stories, no jokes, no remembering things. Just do the job.
Awesome.
Oh, too funny. So how, a lot of times you go to websites and you have an experience and then they want you to fill out surveys. But I don't want to fill out surveys every time I go to a different website and do a transaction. So what are some of the techniques that companies can actually use to learn what their customers want out of an experience without just overwhelming them with these kind of surveys?
Yeah, I mean, surveys, feedback, it has a place, but there's better technology today to understand what the customer wants or needs and what the experience was like. A lot of our customers that we work with use speech analytics and text analytics. So you're mining those conversations and pulling out the themes and the categories to understand what the issues were. I mean, do you have an issue with an agent, or is there a service or an offer that people don't understand, so they're calling in? One of the really interesting things, and this is where having coverage across channels tends to make a big difference, is we saw that consumers were calling into them and complaining about the digital experience. They weren't filling out the survey on the website. They weren't providing feedback that way. And so it would have dropped off. But then you had speech analytics and they were looking at the data and they're like, hey, website, digital, this keeps coming up over and over. And you can figure out, you can go back and look at your digital behavior analytics and really understand where people were getting tied up and fix the issue. You never had to ask for that feedback. And a lot of times you learn things that you wouldn't necessarily get through a survey just by really looking at the data. So that's certainly one way that we're seeing a lot of people learn. And even better than surveys is when we're working and improving experience as it happens. So I don't need to send that feedback form, because as that experience is happening, I'm listening to it again with the analytics, understanding what's happening using like linguistic and acoustic triggers. So the systems can hear, this person is being silent a little bit more than I would have expected, or they're raising their voice, and can coach that agent. So you improve the experience as it's happening rather than have to wait, get the survey, see there was an issue, and follow up.
So Celia, what kind of technology is actually layered below there to make all that happen?
It's a lot of data that you're pulling together, which in itself is tough to do for a lot of companies, because you do have these silos of data everywhere. So pulling all that interaction engagement data into a unified engagement data hub, very important. And then being able to use AI to drive insights and decisions. And I think this is what makes a lot of companies stand out, because when you have effective AI that can learn from the data, raise the insights so people can change how they interact and what they're doing, it increases decision velocity, right? You understand what's happening a lot faster than you would normally, and you can take action on it faster.
Is that what you mean when I read on your website about intelligent experiences?
Yeah. I think, it seems pretty simple, and it may sound a little marketing jargon or whatever, but it's so true. Like, you can have an interaction, but if you don't have that conversational artificial intelligence working with you, that AI to improve it and understand it, you lose a lot. And so being able to drive an intelligent experience where I understand when you call in what you need, what the background and history we have together, brand to consumer, and I can bring that to the table, it makes that experience a lot richer.
So let me ask you to put on your futurist hat and look ahead 5 years, Celia. How do you think this industry will look different and smarter than it is today?
I think it's a little crazy to think how much it's changed, right, in the last just year or so. And then looking forward 5 years, I think we keep moving down this, we were talking about feedback after the fact, and we're seeing real-time improvement of the experience. I think we're moving to proactive, which I think proactive is exciting. Being like, I don't want to, if my filter needs to be replaced in my refrigerator, or something breaks that has a sensor, an appliance breaks, that brand should know and should just take care of it for me. They should order the service request or reach out proactively through WhatsApp, where we've been engaging, and see what I need. And I think moving to proactive gets really exciting. And then I think AI is, again, a lot of people are starting to see the power of it. They're starting to use it. I think having it used much more broadly in the context of customer experience will lead to some more exciting changes down the road.
Thank you for sharing your insight and experience and all the exciting developments at Verint. Thank you, Celia.
Thanks, Kevin. I appreciate you having me on to talk about it with you.